Hello and namaste to everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. So in this episode of On the Mic with Parth, we have with us a very special guest with us, somebody who I personally look up to. I have been following since many years. So the guest today is Jost Kobusch. He is a mountaineer, alpinist from Germany who has done some very crazy climbs across the world. His style of climbing is, as he says in the purest way, means no supplemental oxygen, no Sherpa support, and no fixed ropes. So that is how he climbs. He has done some crazy climbs across, he climbed Annapurna in 2016. Recently in 2023, he summited Mount Denali in North America in winters, solo and unsupported, which is one very crazy feat. In 2020 and 21 winters, he attempted to climb Mount Everest from the West Ridge in winters. He was the only mountaineer who was there all by himself, attempting to climb Everest from a completely different route. So we spoke about all these things in this podcast, and for everybody who is interested in mountaineering and for everybody who is not interested in mountaineering, this is a podcast which you must watch, because the mindset, the approach, the honesty of this person towards his craft, towards his game, is something I think all of us can take many valuable lessons from and implement in our life and go to the next step. So without much further delay, Jost Kobusch, everybody. So hello and namaste, brother. How are you?
Namaste, Parth. I'm good.
Where are you right now?
I'm in Chamonix. Out of that window, I can see Mont Blanc right now. It's pretty bad weather at the moment.
Okay. So what are you doing there? What's the plan?
So I live here. I train here.
First of all, many congratulations to you on your recent summit, solo summit in the winters on Mount Denali in North America. That's a phenomenal achievement. We were really happy to see you do that. So how was your...
Yeah, thank you, Parth.
You're welcome. How was your experience on Denali in winter, solo?
Poof, I mean, it's just really extreme. Like, imagine it a bit like the environment is toxic in a way, and if you touch something with your bare skin, there will be instant pain. So Denali itself, like all the route and everything, it's not so technical. Even though I didn't climb the normal route, it's not a very technical route. This mountain is just huge, which means from base camp to summit, the altitude difference is greater than on Everest.
How much is it, the altitude difference?
It's roughly 4,000 meters of altitude difference.
Wow.
So I think you start something like 1,800 meters in altitude at the base camp.
Right.
And you go to 6,190. So then it's like, what is it, 4,000 and something.
That's
and
crazy.
On Everest, it's only 3,500. So
right. So how was it then?
Cold and dark.
How come this idea of climbing winter in Denali came into your mind?
I wanted to climb Denali already way early in winter. It's known for its cold and extreme temperatures, and I thought it would be a very good way to learn, to be forced to learn, and to build skill, also to learn something for the Everest project potentially.
I've always wondered this, I mean, I have been on climbs where there were no Sherpa support, but I was never in a Himalayan mountain or any high altitude mountain all by myself. So that is something I really wish to do. I don't think I am ready yet to be all alone, all out there. So how is it, man, psychologically, to be all by yourself there?
I guess, like many things in life, you don't directly go into the extreme. Like you start off like by maybe climbing a mountain in the Alps by yourself, and then maybe you go for an expedition on a more familiar, I don't know, project. For me, I have been out there many times just by myself, but I guess Denali was, in a way, also was for me next level, because you're really deep into wilderness. like the next village or whatever settlement is like 100 kilometers away, and you know that you cannot be rescued out there. So there is a certain psychological element that makes you feel vulnerable.
So do you ever feel lonely?
I guess it happened a lot in the past,
Hmm.
but then maybe on projects where I wasn't really sure why I was climbing it, and I wasn't really answering my personal, how do I say, my personal why, you know?
Hmm.
Like, so that was not aligned in the recent projects, and in the last years I also worked a lot on my mental performance, and now I'm able to enter a state that's very how do I say, very observing. So let's say, for example, on Denali, it's hard, it's stormy, it's extremely cold, it's dark, you're there by yourself, you have this heavy equipment that you need to bring up the mountain, because it's winter. You have all this equipment to stay safe, to stay warm. I'm in a state where I do not really feel um, like a negative energy or anything. I'm not worried or I'm not lonely, but I also do
Hmm.
not feel joy or happiness. I'm just there. I'm just observing, and everything is just like a fact, you know? So something, for
Hmm.
example, I lose a piece of equipment
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, it's a fact. It's not there anymore. What do you do now? It's
Hmm.
not, it's nothing to worry about or to be unhappy about. It's just there. And the same with rewards. Yeah, I arrived at this point where I wanted to go. Now it's just a fact.
I think in a way every mountaineer must really try to understand what you are saying, because for most people, they are either happy or either sad on either, ends. But to be balanced in between, if anything nice happens, you don't become happy. If anything bad happens, you don't become sad or, scared. How did you arrive in this balance state? Is it with experience or is it by something else? Because it's something that is very, I mean, it is the way to be in the mountains, I would say.
Honestly, I don't know. I think after some solo expeditions, it just happened. And I noticed, for example, I was
Hmm.
on Everest in 2019. I tried to winter climb. I was on the Lola Pass,
Mm-hmm.
which is the connection from the Nepalese side to the Tibetan side.
Mm-hmm.
I was on there, it was very stormy, and suddenly there was a gust and it bent over my tent, and it bent it over like to this height. The complete tent was to this height, bent over. And the problem was I was cooking something inside. So
Oh
it
my God.
threw over my burner, and I had like 1.5 liter of water in my sleeping bag now. And it's winter Everest, which is very cold. You don't want water in your sleeping bag.
No.
And I noticed that I was just, just putting the burner up, putting some new snow in, shaking the sleeping bag a bit, and then laying in it, and just like, okay, maybe now I try to suck it up or whatever, like work with the water. But I noticed that I didn't feel any emotion. I mean, I guess on climbs before, I probably would have been
Hmm.
um, angry because I don't know, I'm stupid, I should have known this could happen or whatever, or
Hmm.
maybe I would blame the tent or whatever. But at this point, I was just really observing. Okay, this happened. What can I do to reduce it next time? So I took a rope that I had with me, and I put the rope around the burner so that if the tent would bend next time, it would be protected. Also, I kept holding the pot, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was the first time I really consciously noticed this state of mind. And also there, I'm I'm starting from the base camp, and then I'm up in the mountains, and I realized then more and more about the mechanics of how I could achieve this state. And also, how do I say, when I'm in this state, I'm not connected to people either. So I would be probably very antisocial because I see everything very observing as facts, and that's not how human interaction works. So what I noticed is, once I come back to civilization, then this mindset is completely gone. This meditative state is gone. I transform then again into somebody who's interacting with humans, with other people. Yeah, I guess it was just like a discovery, and then I refined it over the years.
So on Denali, what was the lowest temperature that you experienced?
So the temperature is very stable in general. The base camp temperature was not differing too much from the summit temperature. So in
Okay.
base camp, it's minus 40 Celsius.
Mm-hmm.
And at the summit, it should be similar, I guess, something like minus 45. The main
Okay.
difference here is you have wind chill because the
Mm.
jet stream hit the mountain, and with wind
Mm.
chill, there was a temperature of minus 70 Celsius roughly recorded kind
In this season when you were there
on my summit day.
on your summit day. Okay. So what are the kind of clothings that you wear? Is this the 8,000-meter gear that you were using on the expedition?
It's customized different gear. So the
Okay.
problem is it's dark, which means it's very difficult to dry insulation. If you would bring down insulation, your sweat would accumulate, it would freeze in the insulation, and the down would collapse, and then you don't have insulation. I'm using sleeping bags that are made out of G-Loft. It's like Primaloft, but yeah, just in my opinion, performs a little better. My clothing insulation is made of the same material.
All right.
It's an artificial insulation, and so I wear many layers. Maybe you've seen the layers on my Instagram channel.
I
I
did.
posted all of them there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's just like layering, layering, layering. And to
Mm-hmm.
be honest, the huge insulation suit I was keeping for the summit push, and I did not wear it before, because I knew it was gonna get way, way, way colder than before.
Mm-hmm.
Also, before I was hauling this very heavy sled uphill,
Mm-hmm.
um, with like up to 64 kilograms of gear. So that also kept me warm.
Mm.
And then it's all about using Nalgene bottles with hot water
Right.
close to your body, using chemical heat pads, all
Mm.
of that stuff.
Because a lot of people watching this would be people who are actually into climbing high mountains. I want to go a little more deeper into the solo unsupported expeditions. So for example, on Denali, how many days was it, the whole expedition start to end?
22 days on the mountain.
Okay, so you were carrying all the food all at once, or was there supply coming in?
There is no supply
No
coming
supply
in, and
coming
during
in.
the 22 days, I did not see a living thing. Like
Wow.
no human, and also rarely no bird this time.
Right. So what are the kind of food that you carry for 22 days? What do you eat?
I use dry freeze meals, freeze dried meals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so I mean, these meals. I just add hot water, and then I
Right.
have food. Then I do have like a lot of carb-based snacks like chocolate that
Hmm.
I can eat. For these extreme cold temperatures, is also usually very good to have like some high-fat meals or to put
Right.
extra oil in your food. The
Mm-hmm.
only problem is if you put this fat in altitude, uh, your body doesn't really like it because the digestion needs a lot of oxygen, and if you like want to digest fat, that's actually hard work, and
Hmm.
you don't want to do that to your body in high altitude. And
Hmm.
now you have to imagine Denali in winter is having a lower air pressure. So because it's so cold, all the air sinks down, and there's less air in the higher areas. So the air pressure on the summit of Denali in winter would feel like approximately 7,300 meters in the Himalayas.
Oh. When I go on expeditions, especially 8,000ers and even 7,000ers, after the third or fourth day on the high camps, the food gets a little difficult to consume psychologically. So does this happen to you that, you just can't eat anymore? psychologically because it doesn't, it's not as good for your taste buds.
Look, when I'm in this observing state of mind, it's like
Mm,
a fact. I need to eat, I need
mm,
calories, I eat, and that's it. What helps if like you struggle to eat enough is eat familiar things, like things that you
mm.
brought from home, maybe. Maybe there's this one chocolate that I don't know, a friend of mine gave me on the journey, or my girlfriend packed for me, and I'm keeping that for the day where I'm like, I need to eat something, but I'm not feeling well or something. And
Hmm.
so I eat that. But on this expedition, actually, I just ate, and the rule is just like eat as much as you can. And if I feel like having two dinners, I have two dinners, you know?
Okay, absolutely. I think that's what even I do. I carry all my food from India, the food that I know. Mother makes some sweets for me, some things for me, because high up there, only that you feel like consuming. I understand that. Actually, I met one of your friends on Manasulu this season, Nico.
Nico, yeah.
Yes, he was in my team. So we spoke a lot about you, and it was nice to see how small the world is and how people come together.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so next week Nico will come here and we climb something here in Mont
Awesome.
Blanc.
Say hi to him.
Sure.
So you're climbing Mont Blanc right now in winters? It's almost like springtime now, but
It's to be precise, it is spring. So the spring started on 23rd of March, so
right.
for a full week now. And
Okay.
we want to climb a route that when we attempted it last time, it was too dry. There was not enough ice there, and there was a
Hmm.
lot of rockfall. It's on the south face of Mont Blanc, and
Mm-hmm.
so we go there early because we believe it has the best conditions for the route.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Awesome. All the best for this climb of yours. I want to ask you, you said one thing which I found very interesting, the why of why you climb mountains. So why do you climb mountains?
It took a long time for me to discover
Hmm.
that because this why is also not static, but like it can change. It's
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. But I feel like, well, for me, like when I discovered um, why I'm doing it right now, it just feels like maybe this is not changing, and this is really coming from my inside. Curiosity. It's my curiosity about what I can achieve as an athlete, as a human being, but it's also that I'm really, really curious about what to see up there, what to expect, what to learn, what to explore. So let's say I'm on Everest winter and it's cold, it's extreme, and um, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go up. Then I'm like, activating my why again. I'm like, but what's behind that corner? I haven't been there. I want to look there. I want to see it. And suddenly I'm all fueled up again. I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
I want to go up, you know?
Interesting. Interesting. One thing I want to ask you because you mentioned you have a girlfriend and I recently got engaged. So, for example, after my engagement, I went to one expedition to Manaslu in last autumn. Before that, I've never felt the need to even activate my internet, once I leave my home. Genuinely, that need was never there. Yes, my parents are here, I love them, but I know that it's okay. But when I was on Manasulu, it was psychologically for the first time, it's very new. I don't like it that when I'm on the mountains, I'm thinking of anything or anyone else. So, first of all, how do you deal with this fact that there are people for you back home? And you said that when you are in that zone, you are not even connected to your people somehow. So how do you unconnect? What advice do you have for me who's new into this state of life?
Maybe I should offer like a mindset meditation class for this. I don't
Yes.
know. Like I can give you a very short input on this,
Uh-huh.
but it's just like basically your loved ones, your friends, your family, they are home. They are not there with you, and your job is to come back safely to complete the task. You need to focus on what's right in front of you in order to make sure that it's as safe as possible. And you want to have also some chances of success.
Mm-hmm.
And you increase all of that by being there 100%, not being somewhere else with your mind. And so I think that's the basic. That's why I'm also trying to be very much disconnected and very, very focused. And the goal is to activate focus on the mountain. And there are different ways to do it. For example, you have a long summit day. You climb for 30 plus hours. You're in a tricky spot. Maybe you're climbing downwards, backwards, some icy slope, maybe an ice route. And you need to be focused. And your body wants to fall asleep and you're fighting it. Then one way to stay focused is to use your fear as a tool. So you activate your fear. You're like imagining what can go wrong if you make a mistake now. You imagine how you fall down, how you break all your bones, how you possibly die, whatever, whatever works for you. You activate the fear, and the fear creates focus for that moment. And it just like the moment becomes crystal clear again because you're afraid. And this is just one of the many ways. And when you're afraid, you don't think about your fiancé in France.
No.
You think about placing your ice axe in the right position. And that's what's counting in the moment.
Even for people who don't climb mountains, but who do whatever in their life, there have been moments in everybody's life when they are intensely focused on something. And that is the moment when really nothing is existing in your mind, not even yourself. Only your action is there. But when there is no action, when you're sitting at base camp for a week, that's when all the, drama starts. So does this happen with you also?
Oof. I mean, when you're sitting in base camp, it's a different story because you have nothing to do. I mean, there are things that help with long waiting periods. For example, you've been to Manaslu, you've been just waiting there because the weather was horrible. I remember because I was on the other side of Manaslu at the same time on a different phase, so trying to solo something.
Yes.
And the weather was absolutely horrible. I was on this side with no internet, by the way. So for me, it was no chance to connect. I mean, one thing you can do is to build routines. So every morning you go out and maybe you take your smartwatch and you say, my goal for every day is to take 5,000 steps. So you have a routine. Okay, you have a task, 5,000 steps per day. My goal is to read a certain book and maybe learn something from it every day. Or my goal is to, one time on an Everest expedition with long waiting, I have this program on my computer that teaches you how to do 10 finger typing, So I just used the program and practiced every day by 10 finger typing. So I have a task. So these tasks, they give you structure, they create routines, and they will help you to overcome long periods of waiting. They give you certain mental stability, something like a structure to look forward to.
Absolutely. So it's, I think, one of the most important advices that 8,000-meter climber can get, because climbing, when you're climbing, no problem, you don't think of anything. But I think 60-70% of the time you're not climbing on a 8,000er. So how long have you been climbing mountains? How did this idea that you want to be a mountaineer or an alpinist happen in your mind?
I think the idea was born when I joined the climbing group in my school. In high school, in sixth grade, I was 12, and we had this climbing wall in the gym, and I joined a group where I would learn to climb and to belay and everything. I enjoyed it, maybe also because I was scared, and I always enjoyed the things most that also scared me the most, and work with the fear, and I found that fascinating. And already then I was thinking, this is so much fun. It would be so cool to become a professional climber. At that time, I mean, I was 12. I thought it would be cool to be a pro climber. Eventually, later on, I did my first outdoor climbing when I was 16, quite late. So I grew up in the gym, basically. And when I did the outdoor climbing, I got in contact with people who do mountaineering. And then I thought, okay, want to go to these mountains. And then the dream was born to maybe one day climb an 8,000-meter peak. And then I thought it would be so cool to be a professional mountaineer. It was not climber anymore because it changed to mountaineering. But at the same time, I was very aware that it's very difficult to become a professional mountaineer. And like, it's not like you go to university and you visit classes and you only need to do what they tell you and then you arrive at the goal and the path is laid out for you. Um, and so I chose a path that was laid out for me. I wanted to study medicine and specialize in high altitude medicine. So I thought that this way I could like live my passion. But what I was really doing was I was trying to, how do I say, study of medicine was like a shadow career, you know? It's like these people who want to become an actor and then they become the assistant of the actor.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
in 2015, I had a very close call, a near-death experience in Everest Base Camp. And to survive that was like a rebirth. And I could clearly see that this studying medicine was this shadow career. And I was like, okay, look, surviving this avalanche has taught me that it's like, it could have been over. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to, maybe not be able to make a living as a professional mountaineer. And if it doesn't work, you can still study medicine. So I was just like, okay, I give it a go and I'll try it. But it was nothing like planned, you know. It was not like I'm becoming this professional mountaineer and I will, I don't know, make a living of that. It was very uncertain in the beginning if I wanted to even do it.
A career like mountaineering, which, as you rightly said, has no proper path, no university. I think in that you cannot, there cannot be a point when you say, okay, I'm going to be a professional mountaineer. It is a gradual thing. Even if I look at my life, there was not one point when I said, okay, now I will be a professional. It happens gradually. And I got to know about you in 2015 when the Nepal earthquake happened. You were at the Everest base camp and you shot that video. Now, what I remember about that video is seeing my friend there, Kuntal.
Kuntal, yeah.
So I submitted Everest with him in 2019 from Tibet. I remember seeing Kuntal in your video, screaming and saying, fuck, fuck, fuck. So that's how I first got to know about you. 2015, Nepal earthquake. You were at the base camp. How was that like? I mean, the whole country went through such a disaster. And Everest base camp was, as you said, hit by the avalanche, which you filmed. The video went absolutely crazy all over the world. So how was that like? Because a lot of people lost their life at the base camp. So how was the movement on that base camp when the earthquake hit and the avalanche came?
First, I was very excited because you have to know I've never experienced an earthquake before.
Okay.
And everything was shaking really hard. I was like, oh, this is cool, and especially because there are it's a city made out of tents. So like there are no buildings that can collapse. It's theoretically the best place to be when there's an earthquake in a tent.
Right.
So I was feeling super safe. I've been living there for a month. It's your home. And I was excited. I was filming a bit. And then I suddenly saw these people running away. And I'm turning around and there's this huge avalanche. It's just like massive. It's so big, I can't even tell if it's moving super fast or super slow, but it's coming towards us. And I'm like standing there and people are running away, but I'm like asking myself, does it even make a difference if I run now? So I'm just standing there. But then eventually my autopilot is like sending very simple signals, which is like run, jump behind something, run, jump behind something. So I'm running. And then I see Kuntal and Taro, two friends, behind a tent. And I mean, objectively, it's not very smart to go behind a tent if an avalanche is approaching. But I guess my autopilot was just like, okay, do other people already independently calculate that this is a good spot to be? So just go there. So I guess that's what happened. So I just jumped there behind the tent and the avalanche hit. Boom. I had a huge jacket on because I was chilling that day in base camp, just resting. And so I opened the jacket and I took Kuntal and Taro under the jacket. So we were 3 people under the jacket breathing there because otherwise you couldn't breathe. There was no chance. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, in that moment, I guess we're all sure we're gonna die.
So was it like a powder avalanche?
It was a dust avalanche, which you have to imagine like an explosion, and you're hit by a shock wave that's filled with snow and ice particles. So you're not buried. In total, maybe this much of snow had been there from the dust,
Mm.
but you're hit by an immense force. And of course, usually the dust avalanche is what goes in front of maybe something more solid hitting.
Yes.
And if something solid hits you, that's it. Like, I mean, you like these pieces are ice pieces that fell down maybe 2 vertical kilometers from Pomori, which means you're going to be crushed. But I guess it's just like it fell down so deep that all the ice just exploded. And still, this pressure wave was so big that it destroyed a massive part of the base camp. And it, like, I mean, people were flying through the air, gas bottles were flying through the air, tents were flying through the air, tents with people in them. It was only a dust avalanche, but it was a very strong one.
And I don't think most people realize the power of the force because, people see the snow and ice coming down. But in my experience, for the first time, actually, when I was on Annapurna in 2021, we were climbing between Camp 2 and Camp 3 through the gully. And
Mhm.
it's a very crazy place for avalanches. You've been there, you know.
Yeah, like every 15, 20 minutes, something comes down.
Yeah, exactly. And this massive avalanche started coming down towards our right in the gully down. We were quite high up, away from the reach of the avalanche. So I was just filming and standing and just watching because I know it will not hit me. So you can just observe properly what actually happens when avalanche of this magnitude comes. The craziest thing I remember seeing is ahead of the avalanche, there were boulders and rocks flying off. The avalanche had not even hit the boulder yet, but the gust of the wind that the avalanche carries, as you said, the force throwing off boulders size of a car, like like this. And I was like, if I was there, if we were there, even before the avalanche would hit us, we would be flying off in the air like a bloody eagle. It's so crazy the force that a big avalanche carries. And yeah, so you were there at the base camp, the avalanche hit you, and then the avalanche settled. So after that, what was it like? What was the state of the base camp, and when did you actually realize that, oh, people have lost their lives here?
First, of course, you're very much focused on yourself, but then we got up
Hmm.
and we thought we go to the dining tent because the dining tent was like a very strong tent. It's made with these very thick metal poles and it's like super solid. But that tent actually was completely flattened, so we just
Hmm.
ran towards the kitchen tent, which I mean, maybe there were like 8 or 10 people in there holding the tent while the avalanche hit. So only the fabric ripped, and of course it was a mess, and half of it was gone, was flown outside. But
Oh.
I guess that's also when we saw the destruction the first time, because
Hmm.
behind the hill of our kitchen tent, everything was gone. We were just on the limit of like not all our camp was wiped out. I remember Kuntal, he was only wearing a t-shirt, so he had very cold hands. So we started a burner and we warmed his hands and we put him in a sleeping bag. After that, I took some heat pads, like chemical heat pads that I had, and I went straight into the zone of destruction because I assumed there would be more people that are cooling down because they lost all their gear. So I reached the hospital, but it's like a war zone. So it's like you're surrounded by all this broken stuff, broken tents, everything's just like flattened. And the hospital tent is a quite strong, it's quite a big tent, but it was ripped in half. The front half was gone and it was open, and there were like medical stuff, like medical things were like all over the place flying, and there were some people with head injuries. And so there were people helping, and I like handed out some warmers, but I soon realized I was underqualified to help because apparently there were so many doctors on the expedition that they all went there, and then there were like a lot of healthcare professionals. I went back to my base camp. We didn't have a lot of medical supplies for serious injuries there. Helicopters couldn't fly because they only fly on view flight, like they have to see something. We had 64 injured people, and I guess 4 of them died overnight due to their head injuries, because, yeah, I mean, they needed to be in a hospital.
But I think on the base camp, over 16 people lost their life in total.
I think 16, and then 2 in the ice fall, and then 4 died
Yes.
overnight due to the injuries.
This question I ask every mountaineer who I speak to. See, we know that, these expeditions are dangerous. Anything can happen, including death. And you have seen people die in the mountains. You climb long enough, you will see people die, or either you will die. Those are the only 2 outcomes. You will see a lot of people die, or you will die over the years. So when you see death,
or you go solo, then you only then you don't see other people die.
that is there, but then the fear of maybe you dying is always there. So
Sure.
how do you deal with this idea that, okay, this can be my last expedition? For me, whenever I go on an expedition, the night before, I sit down with my parents, I have a few beers with them, and I say to them that, okay, this can be the last time we are meeting. Mostly not, but this can be. With such a mindset of, death hovering over you in the mountains, how do you deal with that? How do you look at death?
So when I was very young and I went to my first expeditions, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm dying, bye-bye, but like maybe I'm coming back. But with the years, I changed that mindset, because if I'm thinking that maybe I'm dying, then, I mean, maybe there's already a planning error there. Of course, there's a small chance always that something goes wrong, but I shouldn't have the feeling that maybe I'm not coming back, kind of like. So I'm trying to plan everything out, and I'm trying to plan everything as safe as possible. And there are different measures you can take to increase safety. I changed my mindset. When I climbed Annapurna 1, the death toll before on the mountain was like 30%. That mountain really changed my philosophy, because for the first time, the approach of doing crazy things and hoping nothing goes wrong wouldn't work anymore. Before I climbed Annapurna, my approach to mountaineering was really learn or die. It was just like I was doing crazy projects. They were really hard, and I wasn't ready. I didn't have the experience, but I would get the experience from the project and like advance as a mountaineer with the project. That's a very dangerous approach, because I would learn a lot on the spot, but not necessarily maybe have the skill. And on Annapurna 1, the learn or die approach, I realized wouldn't work anymore, because it's so dangerous. That's when I said to myself, look, the summit is a bonus. It's great that you can experience this. You don't have to go all the way. You decide. And from that expedition on, I kept the philosophy. First of all, it also chills you psychological, because every step can be a point of rest, because after every step, you can decide, I'm going home. I don't need to go to the summit. In a way, it calms you down so much. You don't feel like this, but it's still so far to the summit. No, you're just like, if I don't want it, I just stop. I go home. If the risk becomes too high, I go home. On the other hand, this is also something that keeps you safe. If I don't summit Everest, I don't feel a sense of failure or pressure or anything. I'm there to learn, I'm there to explore, to experience. Of course, the goal is to summit. I want to go to the summit, but the summit is a bonus. I don't take it for granted when I go somewhere.
100%. And on Annapurna, when I was there, I could not summit it because I developed a stomach infection when I left from the base camp for the summit push. But somehow with that weak body, I, managed between camp 3 and camp 4, I reached. But at that point, the body was so weak, I knew, okay, maybe I can reach the summit. I was sure I can reach the summit. But coming back down was a bit of a doubt. I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, if something like this was happening to a friend of mine here, what would I say to him? I would say, go down now. So why is it that I'm confused whether I should go up or no? I should go down if it's the same advice I would give to my friend. So with a lot of heavy heart and sadness, I went down. I'm still sad about it, but I don't regret it. I don't regret the decision ever. One of the things which I remember when I had to make the decision was postcard, which you sent to me. You remember on your, after the Everest winter attempt, you were sending out postcards, and on that you had written something that it's always okay to come back once rather than not coming ever. So that thing hit me. I was like, yes, it's not worth. I could see the summit right there, though it's quite far, but you can see it right there. But it's okay. And after this expedition, I made a documentary, and in that, there is a quote that summit is not success, safety is success. Summit is just an added bonus. This is the mindset that people need to have before they step in the mountains. As you said, summit is just a bonus, it doesn't matter.
The problem is that can be very, how do I say, it can be very easy to have the illusion that the summit is the goal. But the problem is when you're on the summit, you have only done half of the way, and you have the other half still ahead of you. The goal is to be back in base camp safely. That's the goal, but it's very easy to forget that when you're climbing a mountain.
Somehow for me, more than 50% of my expeditions have not been successful, and never there was the strong pull of the summit that I experienced. Never. If the situation was bad, I never felt like, oh, I have to go, I have to go. No, so what? I like, it's my personal experience. But for for most people that I see around me, even on Manasulu this season, I know what I'm going to say will upset a lot of people, but it's okay. After the avalanche hit, even if it was snowing heavily and the chances of avalanche was still present, a lot of people still decided to go ahead, risking their life and risking their Sherpa's life. And you can see classic symptoms of summit fever, that even if the situation is like, no, you just wait. But no, just want to go, just want to hurry, just want to go. I think it's crazy. I can never personally understand this.
So, Parth, when you climb, do you use oxygen? And if you use oxygen, why do you use oxygen?
On Everest, that was my first 8,000er. I climbed it from Tibet, started using O2 from 7,100 meters, which is Camp 1. Up till 7,100 meters, it was very difficult, of course, because it's 7,000 meters. Next day, when I started using O2, I started running. Okay, this is nice and warm and easy, but this is not the reality. The reality around me is something else. And I asked my Sherpa if I can, avoid using O2 up till Camp 2. He's like, no, 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 this and that. I'm like, okay, this is my first 8,000er. Let's not risk anything. Let's see at least how it is. But when I was using O2 and climbing towards Camp 2, I promised myself that the next 8,000er I climb will either be without O2 or I will not climb. So my next one was Annapurna. I prepared really, really well. I was not going to use O2. I was not even carrying a spare cylinder. I was like, I will go up till the point where I can go. If I can't go, I will come back. Because this idea, you are on a 8,000er, but in your oxygen mask, you are experiencing maybe a 4,000 meter atmosphere or a 5,000 meter atmosphere. That somewhere feels wrong to me. This is what was my next question. Why do you climb without O2? What was the reason behind you making this decision?
To me, oxygen is simply doping. It's adjusting the environment to your skill. It's not adjusting your skill to the environment.
Absolutely. 100%. So you've ever used O2?
No, never. So I don't even know if people ask me. I mean, I've watched the briefing in the base camp, how other people did receive the briefing of how to use it. But like I never even had the mask on or anything. So like it would feel very strange to me, I guess.
No, I understand that, because for somebody who has used oxygen, I feel that, see, anybody can, use it. It's okay. It's a completely personal decision. But in my eyes, I would use a strong word called as cheating. So after that, I've been on 8,000ers. No O2. I can't even think of using O2, because if you want to use O2, you rather climb a 4,000er or a 5,000er. If you're going to a 8,000er, it means that you should be able to experience the lack of oxygen, the low atmospheric pressure, the cold. When I was preparing for Annapurna, the 6 months preparation that I went through, I think that was my favorite part, the preparation of climbing without O2. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah. You can say,
how do I say, but what I love about mountaineering in a way is that there is no cheating. because there are no rules. So if there are no rules, you cannot cheat the rules. Everybody has to decide for themselves. Of course, I have a very purist approach. I don't like to use supplemental oxygen. I don't like to use any support above the base camp, and so on, like preferably soloing. But those are only my rules for myself. And if somebody else decides to use oxygen, who am I to judge them for that?
Absolutely,
because
100%.
they have created their own rules, and they create their own experience.
Yes.
As long as nobody endangers somebody else or the environment, I don't care.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And see, when I say cheating, it's not that with the world, with myself, I'm cheating. Because in my heart, I know that if I'm using O2, it's not the reality. And that's my rule. I want to experience the absolute reality of my environment. That's all. That's my rule. And you can't be imposing on anybody else. So, unsupported, no O2 climbs requires crazy level of preparation. So, what is your training routine like? For example, if you have to do peak like Annapurna, no O2 and unsupported, so how would the routine leading up to the expedition look like?
Okay, so there is the base training and there's the specific training.
Right.
The specific training will be adjusted to the goal. The base training is always the same.
Okay.
So, for example, right now, till my next expedition, it's a long time to go. Actually, right now, I'm in recovery, which means I give my body enough rest after the previous expedition, because that's been very demanding. But once I'm out of recovery, I have a training based on modules. But to break it down, what I do is mainly I do low intensity endurance training. I do climbing, and I do strength training and mobility training.
In rock climbing? Climbing as in rock climbing? Or
it can be also ice climbing, mixed climbing, dry tooling, or bouldering.
Right. Okay.
It's like an upper body activity. But I also climb very technical routes, so I need the climbing skills. If it was pure mountaineering, if it was normal routes on 8,000ers, I probably would just like not put the climbing in there,
Right.
But like the West Ridge on Everest, it's mixed climbing, it's rock climbing, it's ice climbing. It has a lot of climbing elements, and because you're soloing, there's no real way to rest, so you need the upper body. And also, I really enjoy climbing, and I enjoy climbing lines here and alpine routes and stuff. I enjoy that, so that's also part of it. So that's a base training, and endurance training in the base can mean cycling, running, it can be hiking and so on. It's all heart rate based and measured. Building a strong base. A strong base for me is based on volume, which means high, how do I say, high amounts. So a long time of training on a low intensity. It could also be that I just climb some easy, like hike up to some 4,000 peaks. In the specific training, now you said Annapurna 1, I would try to go into the specifics. Like, for example, what is the longest day on the expedition? Like, how does it look like? It's the summit. Okay, for the summit on Annapurna 1, your camp will be between 7,000 and 7,200. Then you go to the summit and you have a long traverse. So if that's the longest day, if that's the biggest challenge, I would try to reproduce this day in my training, and I would try to wear the gear for that most challenging time or day. And I would try to get familiar with the gear in my training. Obviously, I can't wear an 8,000-meter boot in the Alps. But then I would wear a boot in my training that has a stiff sole, so that all my body and my biomechanics get used to the stiff sole. And then maybe I know that when I climb a certain section, my backpack will be 12 kilograms, for example. Then I carry 12 kilograms of water in my backpack. But at the same time, I know I'm wearing a down suit and I'm wearing these boots and so on, and they will add another 5 kilograms. So then, the goal would be to reach a weight that would be equivalent to your performance later on. So you start carrying weight uphill, and I start climbing similar routes. So one of my favorite training sections here is climbing some mixed routes in the Mont Blanc de Tacule. It's a 4,000-meter peaks right here. It has mixed lines. So maybe I would solo these lines in my training and take some weight in my backpack while I'm soloing them. So I'm trying to reproduce conditions that are close to the project in advance. That's the specific phase of the training. So that's very basic right now. Of course, we can go into tons of detail there.
Of course.
That's the overview.
Of course. And do you have a coach who is planning the routine for you, or now you've reached a space where you can plan your own workouts, your own plan?
I do have a coach, but my coach is really more like a mentor, because finally, like, I have a certain system, and that system is able to also change with weather conditions. For example, on that day, I have endurance up there, but it's too bad to climb a 4,000er because it's snowing like crazy. Then maybe I do the endurance at a lower section. So I have to be flexible with the schedule. But then I might have questions about certain strength training sessions, about certain input, and then I talk to my coach.
Okay. I know this is a topic we can record a whole podcast on. One of the questions which, as a mountaineer, I get a lot, and I'm sure you do also: how to raise the money?
I do have strong partners that I work with, like Black Yak or HAP Global, that support my climbs. So I'm a sponsored athlete. I'm a professional. I do also sell books, and I do sell motivational speakings. That's what I do. And also sometimes I take people to the Himalayas, and we climb, and it's a bit more like an academy, or like a way to build skills. So I take these people, and they do not necessarily need to have a lot of experience. It depends on what we do. So for example, one thing I offer is climbing unclimbed summits. I would do the research for an unclimbed peak, and I would look at the level and then figure out a peak that could work with the level. Obviously, you never know, because this mountain is unclimbed for a reason. So you go there, and then we'll figure it out together. And along the way, they would learn a lot. The goal is to teach them skills that make them independent, help them make their own judgment, really build skill. And then I would combine these climbs with my own project. So I would go. I love exploring, so it's also a fun job for me. Take them, and afterwards I would climb something higher, where anyway I needed the acclimatization. So it's a good combination.
And if somebody wants to join you on one of these expeditions, how would they come to know about, if something like this is happening? On Instagram?
They would go on my website. So there is a section called Academy on my website. There is nothing on there right now, but if you're interested, just go there, send me an email on my website. I have a few trips planned. I'm not sure if I'm publishing them, because I already have so many requests. That's why usually nothing's on there. And also sometimes it's really like maybe a VIP experience. One person says, I want to do this just with you. I want to do an unclimbed peak. And it's a one-to-one experience. Yeah, just send me an email and see what's going on.
Awesome. You attempted Everest in winters in 2019 and in 2020, 2 times?
No, 2019, 2020 was the winter, and then 2021, 22. Yeah.
Right. So Everest in winters, it's one of the craziest things that exists in mountaineering, even right now, And you went there again, like you do, unsupported and without O2. And you were attempting the West Ridge. That is one of the craziest routes on Everest. So how was that like, man?
Yeah, I would say the craziest routes are in the south face, probably. But the West Ridge is a nice line. It's quite remote. You have to imagine it a bit like you have some rock climbing in the beginning, then you have some mixed climbing, then ice climbing, and then you reach the Lola. Which is like 6,200, and then from there it continues with some more ice climbing, some more mixed climbing, like proper mixed climbing. And then you have a very long ridge traverse, and then I think the most difficult part of this is above 8,000 meter, you have a few climbing sections as well. So it's a technical route. It is very aesthetic. It's a nice line. The line I'm attempting in this combination has never been climbed. It's been climbed before by other expeditions, but they all have different they chose different lines in the end. Yeah, I mean it's very exciting. I really enjoy this project in a way because it's so wild. Like I really enjoy wilderness and being there and being on the highest mountain on earth, but being there by yourself feels like a privilege. So it's great.
Absolutely. And how high did you reach?
So on the first expedition, I reached 7,360 meters, I think. That expedition, I wasn't really sure if it was possible to go out there. I just believed it was, but I had to figure everything out while I was there.
All right.
On the second expedition, I knew the route until there already very well. So I reached big parts of that route already very, very fast in the beginning. I reached 6,450 meters roughly, where I put my Camp 3 within, I think, the first, what was it, first 2 weeks or something, or first 10 days. So very fast.
Wow.
But then the jet stream hit with wind speeds of more than 200 kilometers an hour. And unfortunately, the jet stream stayed for the rest of the winter on the mountain. So there was no further progress there. And I guess maybe high altitude winter expeditions are a bit like war, you know, there are like long periods of boredom followed by short periods of sheer terror. And it was a bit like that.
When you were on Everest in the 21-22 season, I was on a 7,000 meter peak in India called Trishul. It was just 3 of us, me, a climber called Arjun Vajpayee, and someone from Ladakh, Ali. It was absolutely nice and sunny for the first 1 week. When we reached Camp 1, suddenly the winds picked up and heavy snow was coming all on us. And that night we decided that we should go down because the amount of snow that is coming, even if we stay for a day, we would be completely buried in it. So we packed our shit in the night and we, went down the base camp until, from the village from where the trek starts. We are glad we did because the snowfall did not stop for 1 week. And at that height, that amount of snowfall, no support, no communication, nothing would have been crazy. I think winter climbing is one of my favorite things to do also. We are planning to attempt it again in the upcoming winter. So are you planning to do Everest in upcoming winter?
I am.
So that's your next thing, or anything before that also?
Probably go for 1 or 2 7,000ers before.
Man, you should come to India to climb some of the 7,000ers here. We can go on some nice expeditions here. Crazy 7,000ers.
Let me know if you can spot some unclimbed 7,000ers.
There are. I'll get in touch with you about that.
All right.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much, man, for your time. And when mountaineers speak, it can go on for hours. But I will leave you here right now and hope to connect with you again in the upcoming months and years to speak about it more, hopefully face to face somewhere. Thank you so much for your time, and I really wish you all the best for whatever you have to do in your life. Be safe and have fun along the way.
All right, Parth. Thanks for having me. Have a good one, huh?